I'm sitting here with Pope Brock, who wrote a book called Another Fine Mess, and it has a subtitle?
Life on Tomorrow's Moon.
Life on Tomorrow's Moon. First of all, if this is another fine mess, did you have a mess to begin with?
Well, Laurel and Hardy had a mess. That's where I took it from. I just took it straight from 1930s.
Now, you're talking about the possibility of life on the moon. Do you know anything that we should know why people would want to live on the moon rather than the Earth? Do you think the Earth is going to become so overpopulated that there won't be room?
Overpopulated is only one of the possible scenarios by which we could go spinning down the drain. There are probably 10 different forms of apocalypse we're looking at, don't you think?
Why the moon? Why not Venus or Mars or...
Well, we can reach the moon, and we've already reached the moon. We can't get to Mars. We can't get to Mars with anything we've got. But the moon is 250,000 miles away, and we've gotten there. If we can get farther, the moon is the logical place to set up, try things, see what it's like trying to live off-world. People are buying lots right now. There are people selling acres of the moon.
But do they own it?
Well, it's interesting because it turns out that it is possible to sell. There's a man in California who has been selling acreage on the moon since the 1980s. He's become quite wealthy. And the reason is that he's allowed to do that because we have the right to be that stupid. Do you know what I mean? I mean, they don't pass laws against trying to sell pieces of the moon any more than they pass laws about not selling magic beans.
Okay, let's try to envision. There's land on the moon.
Yeah.
The Earth, for whatever reason you want to leave Earth, so you go up there. What do you do first?
Well, when you get there, hopefully some robots have been plowing around and setting up some of the original shelters and things like that. So ideally, there's been a first force.
Yeah, but okay, there's the first force there, then we come over. Where do we eat? Is there going to be restaurants? Is there going to be a McDonald's? I mean, what do we do
Well,
for food?
actually, yes. Domino's and Pizza Hut are in a war of words right now over who's going to have the first pizza franchise on the moon. In fact, Pizza Hut and Coca-Cola both have done research and development on whether it's possible to project their logos onto the full moon. So there's a lot of, forward.
What do you envision them selling there? Just hamburgers and stuff, or would there be special moon patties and...
Well, I don't know exactly how McDonald's would adapt itself to lunar living. They could theoretically make patties out of meat created in test tubes, because that's what other people are working on now. In other words, shipping cows back and forth is not in the cards, I don't think.
And how would we live there? Would we all have condos with condo associations, and code enforcement people coming around to make sure that everything fits?
Can you imagine the surveillance? It'll be really intense. You also have two possibilities. You can erect shelters on the moon, sort of like putting up teepees and then putting 10 feet worth of moon dust on top of them to protect them from lunar radiation. But the other way is to go inside the lava tubes that the moon created when it was volcanic. And there are apparently some huge caverns, living spaces potentially in there. And that's really where the architects of tomorrow have their eye.
Well, I was just thinking, if people sunbathed on the moon, would they be yellow or orange or what?
Ooh. Well, they would have to be extremely careful because because the moon absorbs the sun much more directly than we do. In fact, I mean, to tell the truth, if you tried to sunbathe on the moon for about 30 seconds, you'd be burned to a crisp, because the moon, the sunlight here is filtered through the atmosphere and all the things.
And it's not on the moon.
It's not on the moon.
Well, then how are people without having, what is it, like an ozone layer or something around it? Yeah. Were they going to have to walk around in spacesuits with, an air system just to get to the restaurants so they can have dinner?
Oh yeah, yeah. But they won't look like, according to the people who are designing the suits, they won't look like what Neil Armstrong wore. There are people who are working on fashion spacesuits, with sort of racing stripes and different kinds of color combinations. There are people who are designing clothes to go nightclubbing in on the moon. So that some of the spangles and so forth are specifically geared to no gravity, or 1/6 gravity.
Let me ask you about something else.
Yeah.
If somebody was to have sex on the moon, how do they do that? Because there's no gravity, just as you said.
There's 1/6 gravity, and that's the difference. See, if you try to have sex in a spaceship, it's incredibly difficult. It's an open question whether anyone has ever tried. But the fact is that someone has developed a snuggle tunnel, supposedly, so that you can have sex in a rocket ship. But you have to get inside and you have to stay together. When you get to the moon, there's 1/6 gravity, which is just enough to complete the act, right? But supposedly, according to these various sex visionaries, it will be fantastic because everything will be 5 times slower. So slower is a popular term in sex.
He's right. Let me ask you something. What happens when there's a lunar eclipse? Where do the people on the moon go? Do they just stand there in the sun? Wouldn't it burn them, or do they have to go to the dark side of the moon?
Well, they go underground, which is there. As I say, there is a spectacular amount of space underneath the surface of the moon.
If there was a space and there was like a lunar eclipse, could you envision a Dark Side of the Moon album?
Sure, of course. I don't remember what it was, but I know Michael Collins, the first man to circle the moon, he was playing something like that. Astronauts have played atmosphere music when they go up. They love it.
That's great. So what else do you envision when centuries from now? Will the moon have a look or a part of it that's like South Beach?
Well, yes, or Las Vegas, perhaps, because the hotel industry, the people who are Hilton, these various entities that are hoping to build hotels there, they want to put in a lot of neon, and the idea is when you see it from afar, and when you go inside, it pummels. You're pummeled by sensory. People on poles, all this stuff, to deprive you of all sense of time.
Well, that's very true, and I also think they have another ulterior motive. If they can put enough neon out in space, the Martians might know them, the Venetians, the Plutonians, and who knows, the moon could be the new entertainment capital of the universe.
Well, it could. That could be a mixed blessing depending on who it is that's coming at us. There are two schools of thought about whether we should try to attract alien life or not. One says, bring it on, we're fascinated, we want to see it. And then there are other people, Stephen Hawking, for example, who says, be quiet. You never know who could come and, take you around the neck.
Let's fast forward, and we're still around. Mm-hmm. If you had the opportunity, would you go to the moon and settle there?
I think I don't. I've got a bad back. You know what I mean? I'm not sure I'd be good at it. Although one of the things, another thing that's touted for the future is that perhaps it'll be good for geriatrics because the pull of gravity is just 1/6, right? So if you fall, say, instead of breaking your hip, you just bounce.
Well, that's something to consider, because whether we like it or not, we're all going to get old. Yeah, well, and this could probably be a blessing. But that would make the moon would turn into a senior citizens column.
Well, there's lots of room. We can if we can stick them over in some ghetto the way we do senior citizens so often today.
Well, then I don't want to be a senior citizen. Yeah, that's all. It doesn't sound like it's a lot of fun. Anyway, Pope, this was fun. I enjoyed this, and I had a good time. And next time you're in town, give me a call.